Cool. Welcome to AI Tinkerers. This is officially, we are past the first year. I've done it every couple months. So we have had 7 events so far. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but our mascot has been becoming, just like all of us, more AI aware with each iteration. 7 meetups, 1 hackathon. Thank you all for a fun first year and hopefully into the future as well. First off, we definitely want to thank our sponsors. We are at Vaco, and David Williamson is the representative.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming out. Vaco's happy to sponsor this event. If anyone's hiring AI folks, come talk to me. If you're looking for AI jobs, come talk to me afterwards. Happy to help you guys get plugged in or help you guys network some. So thanks for being here. Thanks for having the event.
Thank you, David. All right. Announcements. If you guys like being social, then guess what? The Data Summer Social is coming up June 17th at the Tailgate Brewery. That's where we had it last time, and it was hot, so I guess it was summer last time. It's already been, has it been a year? Did anyone else go to that last time? Yes. It was really nice. Screenshot that if you want to. Cool. All right, tonight we have 5 speakers. I'm the 5th one tonight. This is the first time I've actually presented at AI Tinkerers, so that hopefully I'm an okay presenter. But let's go ahead and go actually in this order. Would that be all right with you guys? The way this is going to work is you are on Zoom. So if you just pretend like this is a Zoom meeting and share your screen, then I will make sure that the shared screen is up there, and I think it'll work out. All right?
At least we're honest. That helps, right? Hi, I'm Sean Cofoid. Happy to be presenting to you guys today. So I built a thing I'm calling Consulting OS. So I know there's going to be some other people talking about some of the other open source projects that are out there. This one's closed source. It's something I built just specifically for myself. My background is I've spent 15 plus years now leading data analytics AI teams across a wide variety of companies, everything from teeny tiny startups where I was the data team up to huge companies like HCA and Envision Healthcare where I had enterprise scope. Last 2 years, I've been a fractional chief data officer. So I work for small to mid-sized companies, help them to make better data and AI decisions. But as you can imagine, working with a lot of clients, I get inbounds all the time. My emails constantly flooded from different contexts, have tons of meetings back to back. And there's always a question of what do I need to be doing next? And can I actually act on that and be effective? So at one point I thought about hiring an executive assistant. I couldn't afford one of those, as it turns out. So I decided to do what any sensible technology person would do and roll my own. So that's what Consulting OS is. So what I'm going to do is talk through what the thing is that I built, what are some of the key parts about how it actually works, and then a couple of things I think are useful take-home bits of information you can walk away from this. So at the core of it, it's not super sexy. It's just a bunch of files, but the way those files are constructed, I think, does a lot of the heavy lifting. So I use Visual Studio Code as my entry point in, Claude Code as the actual thing going and doing the work inside of there. All of the rest of it, agent definitions, routing, everything else, lives inside of files, Git version files. So I always have a way to go back and see what happened, what changed, and how the thing was constructed. Within that, part of the process that I found that actually helps it work really well is that everything that I do is built on top of itself. So the project itself does the executive assistant work, but then within the project are also the agents that are helping me to build it. And in that flow, one of the patterns I found to be really helpful is pre-committing plans. So figuring out what are we going to do and pre-committing the thing of what we're going to do before we actually even build it, and then actually having a separated role that goes in and checks to see, does it do the thing it's supposed to do, and then when inevitably it breaks, having another thing that can write debug reports that we feed back in and actually create a full learning loop. So that pattern I think has been the thing that's helped this thing evolve quickly and effectively. So getting a little bit deeper into it, it's not complicated, right? We have got skills, those are going to be defined like a normal skill would be or an agent would be as markdown file with some degree of other context attached to it. The middle piece is just a module file, so those are just markdown files that really exist to route requests. So agent comes in, needs to know where to go, module.md will tell it, but here's where you need to go inside of the file system and what you need to write. Payload on the other side of that are small data files. This is mostly things that are going to be like plain markdown, which I think is lingua franca for these AI systems. JSON-L, which are really actually the way that I've structured this of using everything, not everything, but many of the things that I want to keep history on are just like JSON log files. So it's schema of JSON that defines a thing, and then it just gets appended to the file. So as we're making decisions and documenting those, every one of those decisions gets an entry that says, this is the decision, this is where to find it, this is the date that we did it on, and that goes into a depend-only log that allows for the system to understand and document itself. And then a little bit of YAML for things that need a configuration, like where to go for an MCP or something like that. Nothing exotic, there's no vector database inside of it. It's all in a file system. It all lives in a spot where I can get it over to Git and then actually track the history that way. So within that, I've got different agents. I've renamed these a little bit, so you hear me referring to them by different names. I've tried to name them to what they're actually doing. But I have a planning agent, and the purpose of the planning agent is what I described. We have a feature, I want to go build something, I want something to exist that doesn't right now. The planner is the first one to get that, comes up with enough information to hand over to a spec writer that actually will write out the spec that then goes over to the builder agent, which is more like an engineer, actually goes and writes the code, does its own retrospective to say, here's what I wrote, here's why I wrote it. That gets handed off to a QA verifier that gets all that context, because remember, we've been like saving these things all the way through so we can see what did we mean to do, what was the plan for how we did it, what did the engineers say about it, and then the QA agent gets fed all of that. That model means the QA agent's actually catching a lot of dumb stuff before it ends up committed into my code base. So we do then get the actual agent, like it's the whole point of this, right? Like all of those other things are not my executive assistant, and then we get my executive assistant who actually does cool stuff for me. And that agent still screws up, right? These are agentic systems. I'm not a genius. I couldn't pre-figure all of these things and get it completely correct. And that the agents have access to a tool called debug report. And this sounds small, but this has been a big part of the magic. The debug report is really tightly scoped. Do not solve the problem, just tell me what happened. Just tell me the specific steps that took place and what your reasoning was of why you took those steps. That gets written off to another file, log an entry that exists, and then we take that back up to the planner that can then evaluate, hey, I know what we were trying to do, and here's a specific way that it failed, and here's what the agent was actually thinking when it failed. And what that enables is a learning loop. So when you start off with that plan, we actually go through to execution. It doesn't go the way you expect it to, because nothing ever does. We get the debug report. And then we can actually create a decision about, we learned something here, and we're going to iterate something inside of our system. But what's even cooler than that is I've started to stack up decisions and be able to see the log of each of those decisions take place. That's leading my agents to start to find heuristics of what's common across all of these decisions that needs to be baked into another layer of the process that the agent is using to go define something. So this is a little bit more like scientific method, right? Like we have a hypothesis about how the world should work, we make actual observations, and we start to synthesize those together to come up with theories about how the world works. And that's what I'm starting to see happen in this system is it doesn't quite self-evolve. I'm helping benevolently move the thing around. But I think we've all experienced this, right? It's like, I think I've got a good system, but it fails all the time, right? Like part of this is how do you turn failure into focus and actually making things work. So you've been there, your agent fails, you change the prompt a little bit, you added more strenuous language, like, no, really, I want you to use my writing style when you're drafting an email. Please use my writing style. I spent a lot of time on it for a reason. Please don't skip it because it's convenient. And then it fails again, and then you try to write more strenuous language and it fails again, and you end up in this kind of cycle. And I'm sure anybody who's built agents has experienced this. I think the problem here is actually structural, that we can't keep all of that information in our heads. I know certainly I can't when debugging those issues, but a structural system can. And so when we're storing that each item along the way, we can catch things that happen across weeks. So when there's failure modes that occur that don't occur at one clean point in time, but occur across a period of time, we can actually start to capture that and understand it and relate it together. So this is a part of a snippet of a debug report for my executive assistant. It's for, I don't know, the fourth or fifth time, didn't use my writing style. I'm salty about it. But it's interesting is that the specific feedback from the agent was, I weighed speed against the checklist and chose speed without permission to do. The root cause of why I didn't do what I was supposed to do was behavioral. All right, how the hell do you fix the behavior of an agent, right? And I was stuck with this problem. Okay, if it's behavioral, what do we actually do differently? So what's interesting is in the synthesis of this, when we took it back in and said to the planner, hey, what happened here? Like, what do we actually do with this thing? And this is, again, I didn't come up with this, planner did on its own. It says, hey, when skill language fails, reach for structural gates. When the rule lives in a skill and gets skipped anyway, the default move is to tighten the language. We tried that a couple times at this point already. And this works at the margins for some classes of failure. It doesn't work at all. And the agent's generative default is stronger than the gate. this turned into a really useful heuristic for me to start to look at ways to put structural gates in place that constrain what my agent can do so that it will do the right thing more often because we haven't allowed as many off-ramps to deviate from that. So here are a couple more pieces of evidence from this. So the first earlier attempt was like, hey, we tried to tighten the skill pros, add more required prefixes, more explicit language. We still saw the same problem show up again. And then this turned into this heuristic. Sorry, I'm trying to move things around so I can actually see all of my content here. That, again, Claude came up with this on its own in the context of this project. When skill language fails, reach for structural gates, not stronger language. And so we started to create actual checks in place that said certain writing tasks can't take place without being reviewed against writing style, or a writing style skill and a voice checker. And so that largely resolved the issues where, at least if it didn't get run through that particular process, I would know, and then we can iterate again and say, no, really do it. Like we told you to do it, you have to actually do this thing. But this structural gates thing has been really helpful for me, and I've shown up in other places. So when I was actually preparing this talk, I said, Sean, these are nerds. They're going to ask for receipts. Nobody's going to believe this crap unless you can actually show them where it is. And as much of the project as had been self-built within Claude, I hadn't inspected it in a while. And so it's like, all right, hey, my planner agent, my consulting partner can go review and make sure that I have the receipts for everything that I've said in here. In the course of that, we found all these plan files that I was talking about, how important it was to save those. I was saving maybe 15 to 20% of them. And there was just a huge gap in there. I was like, what the heck is going on inside of this system? Why is this not getting saved? It was because the plan files were only getting copied over at a retrospective, and I wasn't actually closing everything out to a retro. A lot of times we'd go chase down 2 or 3 different threads and would lose the plot on what the thing was, and then we'd never get the plan file written out. So filed a debug report for that. Hey, plan's not being preserved in decisions. And the agent went back and said, there's actually a way we can do this. We can use the exit plan mode and a hook that says whenever we exit plan mode, we're going to copy the contents of that plan over to your folder where all of those decisions are stored, and we're going to put that in a log. That happens completely programmatically. I don't have to wait on any agent to do that. There's no decision making. When that hook occurs, then we actually get the desired output, which is that information gets stored. Hook ships, problem solved, and that's the beauty of the learning loop here. I didn't need to know that there was an exit plan mode hook, but the information and context were sufficient for Claude to know that was a thing that would actually be useful and solved. So that's what the learning loop looks like in practice. We have planned to do a thing. We want to make sure that we store all of our plan documents. We have that in execution as rules inside of an agent skill. We find it's not actually happening, put a debug report in place, review all of that, come to the decision of, hey, I think we need a structural gate here. And part of the reason we had the structural gate is that earlier we'd identified that as a heuristic. This is a pattern that we want to see play out again. And it made it easy for the agent to go and say, this is another case where we just need a structural gate. And so that created the improved system that I'm using today. So I hope this has been helpful. I think 3 patterns that have been really valuable for me. And look, I'm not like super smart guy here. I just have managed to listen to some super smart people, but memory is files. I love that my memories are files, that everything is diffable, that it's searchable and greppable. That makes the whole project work really easily for me. These role-separated handoffs, I've heard some people critique this as an approach. I actually like the friction that it forces because the agents are forced to go document their thinking and their state for another agent. And that creates artifacts that then feed this memory structure so that we know why we did things, why decisions were made, and that why ends up creating better output because now the agent can see the full context. And it doesn't matter whether it all happened in the last 2 hours or it happened spread out over every 4 days over a number of weeks. All of that is in a spot that's ready to search and able to be seen. But ultimately that ends up enabling this learning loop that I think is where this project has become really powerful and able to evolve very quickly as I'm asking it to do more things because that whole cycle gets closed through to the end. So really appreciate you guys listening to this. Would love to connect with you guys. That's my LinkedIn up there. If you don't like LinkedIn, I'm happy we can swap cell phone numbers or whatever your kind of preferred way of connecting is. But I'll stop there. What questions do you guys have?
So it sounds like you're
Yeah, so what I've landed on for that is the one that I work with the most often is my executive assistant, and part of the executive assistant skill is a reference to, hey, you have this writing style skill, and generally it's better than average at using it without prompting, but because it was only better than average, and that means there's a lot of times where it wasn't using that particular skill, I created another agent definition that's is fires basically any time that it's going and trying to write out something interesting. It will go in and validate that I have a separate voice file which has slightly different specifications, but it basically does a check against the voice file and says, hey, is this voice met? Does it look like the writing style was used? And if it isn't, then it's instructed to give back the feedback to say, hey, I caught you. Why didn't you do this? Please apply the writing style to it. So again, it's another structural gate that, like, if it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, it has that feedback loop that says, nope, caught you. Please don't do that again. Edit it before we actually write that out to disk or put the email draft out there. So that's just another skill. So that's that one's a skill that gets called by executive assistant, and then I'm trying to remember the specifics of how the gate works, because there is something that's like fail safe in there that'll actually catch it when the executive assistant ignores that skill too. I'm going to go back and dig into the project. I can tell you what the specific hook is, because I can't remember off the top of my head what hook we tied into that causes that to take place. But that's a good question. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, so my problem that I'm trying to solve for is I get dozens and dozens of emails every day. I'm often in back-to-back meetings throughout days. And so and across different clients. So my context is shifting moment by moment throughout the day. And so being able to go back in and say, I committed to do this specific set of things for a person is not something that my brain does well in that context. So for me, it's really a lot of personal context management of figuring out what are the things that I've committed to do, what are the things I've already done. So if one of the loops for me is I may send an email, I have a thing that's checking my sent mail and then looks to see does that close any open tasks. And so that way I'm not having to go back in and close out all my work. In a lot of ways, if you've ever run a software development team, that's like getting people to close their tickets even when they finish the work is always a challenge, and I'm the worst at it. And I've coached many people on how important it is to make sure you go in and document your Yeah, I suck at it. So I built a system that closes them for me, and I'd say 90% of the tickets get closed on their own, and about 10% I have to review. I haven't had any cases yet, because I biased it to be pretty conservative, that where it's closed something that wasn't actually closed without at least saying, hey, I'm not sure about this one. Is this a candidate to close this particular target? But so for me, it's a lot like, do I know all the things I need to do? Have I kept those commitments? And then document that I actually did the thing so that I can get that out of my brain. And that allows me to stay in a much better flow state of just being able to respond to things as they're happening, instead of having that like constant mental nag of, did you write down the thing and did you get enough details on it that you can remember how to do this 4 meetings from now, 4 clients from now? And that's been really effective. Another thing that I'll have it do is write like draft follow-up emails, and they suck. I'd be blunt. Like I think maybe I've sent 2 ever unedited, and they were really short, and that's why I was comfortable sending them. But there's something about just having the email already in the drafts folder with the right email addresses, addressing the right content, and being able to lightly edit a thing instead of having to go in and build it from whole cloth. That's been a huge time saver. And another thing that just makes it easier for me to go in and say at the end of the day, cool, 20 drafts queued up in the drafts folder, and I'm just going to grind through all these, make sure that they get sent, and then that's taken care of. So it's another, puts me into a better flow state to be effective. So I think my encouragement for anybody who's thinking about like a chief of staff or an executive assistant or however you want to frame it is really figuring out where are those friction points for you. What is it that you hate doing that just feels like a grind, especially something that's repeatable? Those are the things that I've tried to push to the agent and that have made my life significantly easier. Jason?
So how do you determine whether to create a skill, and how do those skills evolve as processes change or they don't? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I think part of it is, I think of a couple layers. There's agents, which are technically skills, but I think of agents more like my team. So they have names like executive assistant, product director, engineer. Those are like named roles inside of my system. And those I intend to be more like high level. You're going to use, those roles are going to do things and probably will employ skills. Skills I think of as more specific, like I have a document creator skill. I try to keep everything in Markdown for as long as possible, and then right at the end, I'll run my document creator skill and have it go burp out a docx file that has my branding on it. And that way, all the stuff that I care about is versioned in Git, and then the client deliverable looks pretty. that's a great example of where I think a skill is useful. Any one of my agents can invoke that skill, or I can invoke that skill at the right moment. But I think of those as different layers of abstraction. I'm beginning to build more things that are just straight up scripts. A lot of this project is turning into, I now have a script that goes and fetches meetings. I have a script that transcribes the meetings. I have a script that that takes the transcriptions and turns them into the to-do list. I'm finding that the more things that I can put on Rails, the better, and then leaving the AI to do the things where there's more ambiguity or something is not necessarily perfectly defined. But I think it is always a balancing act in my mind anyway between how much energy do I put into writing this into a skill versus asking an agent to do something as a one-off or even a 2 or 3 off. Like it doesn't, this is a classic, like, how much time do you want to spend automating the thing before you actually get the return on investment for the time that you've saved from it? And I find that I can automate a lot of things I would have never thought were worth automating because Claude is such a good skill writer. But also that takes up brain space for me, remembering what skills I have. It takes up space for the agents to remember what skills they have and invoke the right skill. So there are trade-offs even in that space of not over defining a thing. And that's, again, where I try to push some things into command line tools so that they're really simple to happen in the background, and then it just feels like magic at that point. Do you mind if we do one more? Because I bet Ian wants to.
Can you, is that English language and in a...
I'm sorry, one more time?
You said that you are moving to scripting things now.
Yeah, so
And is that like markdown or is
like literally like a bash script or a Python script that goes and does a very predefined thing. Some of those are predefined, but they are still calling on an LLM to do a process. So like the transcription is happening with an LLM, but it happens in a script now. So the script goes and calls the LLM, the prompt's predefined, and then that gives me the payload back in that case of the tasks that I actually need to complete. And that way, that is super predictable. I was having trouble with the executive assistant wanting to go process conversations by itself and watching my context windows just explode, blow up because it's going through a 2-hour transcript. I'm like, no, please, like, I need you to answer questions about the transcript, not read the whole damn transcript. And that was part of what pushed me to say, I just need a little CLI tool for this. And so that's been, I really like that pattern as a way to keep predictable inputs, predictable outputs.
Thank you.
Michael, you're on.
Okay, I've been messing around with Hermes. It's fun. It's cool. I'm SSH'd in, so everything is slow. But, oh yeah, my name's Michael Pedersen, doesn't matter. I'm 950 commits behind, because this is how fast this stuff is moving. Let me zoom in a bit. And now it's a different color. Yeah, so Hermes is moving fast. It'll just keep scrolling. Okay, there we go. But yes, 953 commits behind. So I've just been messing around with this. In general, I have a NAS in my Homelab. I'll actually just show it really quick. It's very disorganized in the sense that I have a bunch of data that's not
There's one over here.
very well optimized, as you can tell. And so I've just been using Hermes as a means of automating a bunch of Homelab type background services so that I don't have to deal with it, because it's very easy to forget to do things. To that effect,
Is that better?
Yeah,
Keep them off.
keep it up and actually bump up the text size a
Um,
little bit more, Michael, if you would.
okay,
I'm blind.
let me also do that on, let me also do it on here. Okay, so this is like the Hermes like UI. Actually, raise your hand if you've used Hermes before, or OpenClaw. They're similar enough. The whole claim to fame with Hermes is just that it tries to do more like self-introspection and like self-writing of skills based on like chat history, Sean was saying. And I've been using this quite a bit, so roughly 10 million tokens or so. And the claim to fame with it is, or the real thing that I've been using it for is the fact that I have too many tabs. Oh no. Okay, whatever. So I've configured Hermes a bunch, but the main thing that's useful to me that I hope to like showcase to you today, that cron jobs are back. They're amazing. But now you can have a very cheap to run cron job, which is just a script that you can have an LM write. That on an exception, you can have it automatically call like an LM webhook. And that Hermes type webhook agent that's backing that webhook can do really useful things. So for instance, I've set up a bunch of different cron jobs, but one of them is, like I have a morning report, for instance, that gets called every single day just at 9 a.m. It pulls down like CVEs that have been published from the day before. And the useful thing about it is that this is the nice generic report that just lists it out. But the useful thing about it is that it can actually pull my infrastructure and take into account like what my Homelab is actually running. So I have a WordPress server running a Docker container. Oh no, I should probably update that. And I'm still in the process of making this system. So I don't have this triggering anything besides an email right now. But it's really interesting that as part of this, I have Hermes attached to a Kanban system. And I will showcase how, why is this so large? Why is it? I will copy a remade prompt to, getting back to Hermes, just like auto post a blog on my blog, for instance. This is just to showcase, okay, so it's like writing a ticket. And what this means is, so here's a generic Kanban vibe-coded UI that a friend of mine made. In the backlog, it's making like a ticket. Should be making a ticket. Please make a ticket. Okay, created a ticket. There we go. Yes, this top one has a specific label defined to it called auto dispatch. And just trying to pull in useful LLM type functionality into a Homelab environment. This is just an example of it. But it's really interesting to think about all of the different random CVE issues that you have to update, or as agents are trying to take over more and more infrastructure or just automation from your computer. It's really interesting to, as Sean said, break out very predictable patterns and only inject the LLM where it's actually necessary. So I don't really need to, this is a toy example obviously, but it would be interesting to, attach this automatic email to this blog article, and this actually should be running. Oh yeah, okay, it's in progress. But that'll finish eventually. And this is my current website. It does not have any article. But being able to just have something that automatically processes just tickets as you go, it's really helpful. And the only infrastructure that this really requires is just a bunch of cron jobs. So I'm just going to go back to my list for a second. So, for instance, being able to, it's just interesting. What was the rest of it? Yeah. So for instance, here's I'm just going to showcase, these agents are really good at writing just random scripts. So part of what makes like Hermes really useful is the fact that you can basically automate it so that a lot of these cron jobs and a lot of the skills that I actually use in Hermes are actually automatically inferred or like derived from previous chat logs. So for instance, like I deploy my blog quite often, and that's part of a deployment pipeline that's set up, but I never really intentionally made a script for it. So there's actually an introspection cron job that's a nightly cron job that actually goes through all of the Hermes chats that I've had, including Cloud Code chats because I sync them, but whatever. And you can just have the LLM figure out what skills are most useful to it or to you, because anytime you ask it for something repeatedly, it's very easy to pick up on that type of repeated question and prompting style, because usually you say the same thing. And what this cron job actually does is pick it up and makes it into a skill automatically. And at that point, that's the claim to fame with Hermes. It's a whole self-adapting type system that grows with you. Yep. I know. Any questions?
What is a cron job?
Okay. Yes. Sorry. It's effectively just like a Python script, or you can program it in any language, but it's just a program that's run on a schedule. So every 15 seconds to every hour, maybe every day, maybe just a one-off like execution that you want to schedule for March 15th next year. So it can be very adaptable, but the power is you don't have to write the scripts yourself anymore. You can defer that. And so a lot of the promise of a Siri type system is achievable now, because you can just have it write a script to ping you on Signal or WhatsApp or whatever based on any random script that you want, and then you just have it make a cron for it. Yep.
Yeah, so,
Yes. So because it's just a random arbitrary web app, this Kanban board actually does have an MCP for it. But a lot of the first party, just think of a GitHub or like a Gitia if you're self-hosting Git, or just like Bitbucket or Jira, like they all have MCP servers that you can just plug into, and you can just configure those into Hermes. And there are 2 cron jobs I've set up to just push and pull, like check for new tickets, dispatch a webhook to actually process those tickets, and then a ticket just to do a backup just in case it goes down. But there's some tooling, but for a lot of the first-party providers, it's pretty much automatic. Yep, go ahead.
So have you integrated this?
Weirdly enough, I don't do much IoT stuff, which is contradictory, but whatever. I do have it auto-running like a automatic NAS like scanner, because I'm terrible at it, and a lot of stuff gets duplicated, and it's not good enough to just use file-based dedupe. So that's one thing, but that's more so just Homelab stuff, not really lighting. But there are MCP servers for HomeKit and a bunch of others like that. Yep. DeepSeek V4 Flash, because it's cheap and really good.
it's good enough to do the
Yeah.
test you got on it.
It's 20 cents per million tokens input,
Okay.
and pretty much the same output.
And do you have anything implemented for the self-pruning? Because I know if it's probably similar to OpenClaw, right? Which is constantly building
Yeah.
limited context.
Yeah, I think it's a weekly process that is actually built into Hermes. I didn't make it. That just checks to see how often, it runs some analytics on like how often each skill is used, and it prunes which ones
Okay.
are not really relevant anymore.
Did you hook it up to Slack yet?
It's connected to Signal, but that's
Okay.
about it.
Sick. Yeah, use Telegram.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
So I'd say it's pretty obvious that a lot of these different companies are kind of converging on one mega product type deal. And you're seeing stuff pop up on Claude now, like their scheduled stuff. And I've heard a lot of people still are pretty loyal to OpenClaw. I haven't used it a whole lot. I have some cron jobs and stuff. I do use it. I have some cron jobs running, but haven't gotten into the soul and all that kind of stuff of it. What would you say that OpenClaw still owns that the other companies haven't gotten yet?
I think it comes down to like data sovereignty, because at the end of the day, even like I can, and I do have this set up on some like specific agent profiles to run on a completely local model, But I think that's the core piece. Like, being able to export your data from Google level is one level of data sovereignty, but when it's something that's this deeply integrated into someone's life, like being an XO, that's a lot of responsibility. And so as long as you trust the third parties, it's fine. But I think that's still the core gap between the OpenClaw or Hermes versus the scheduled hosted process. But there's always a good mix in between depending on your personal trust of.
It's hard to dig into everything. You kind of got to pick one and go with it.
Yeah. But the concepts map, so it's all good.
See if we can figure out something for him there.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Hi guys. So this is Lumio. This is an application I've been building for the last few months, and you're going to get an overview of it. Before we proceed, let's talk about what the concept is and why it is coming about, and we'll talk about what are the capabilities in the application. I started building this with intent of processing large amounts of documents, unstructured documents with similar content that can be used for things such as processing of healthcare claims. The original concept has come from what happens if a claim goes into audit and the provider sends 1,000 pages. How do you go about using AI to process those claims? Now, if you are a Medicare, Medicaid, healthcare insurance provider, they are apprehensive about using LLMs, especially cloud-hosted LLMs. So one of my primary concerns was to use locally hosted LLM. What you're seeing and what you will be seeing is the application is running on my MacBook and the LLM is running on a gaming desktop, which is a 5080, NVIDIA 5080 with 16 gigs of RAM, 10,000 CUDA cores, and 64 GB RAM on the primary computer where we are posting Docker containers, and the whole application can run on one machine. It is architected using Kubernetes for horizontal scaling, and you'll see some of that capability. Of course, running it as a local computer, all of that is toned down a lot. The application has domains, i.e. you can have a domain for physical therapy claim review, or you can have a domain for stock audit, investment audits, or mergers and acquisitions, or legal, and the application can change its behavior based on that. This is still in demo phase. There are a few building blocks I still have to complete, but let's get into it. First, I'm going to log in as an admin and give you a quite small overview of the admin screen. Out here on the right, I have users, teams, and roles. A very simple concept. You specify the roles, you specify the permissions each user can do, and you add users to the roles, and you add teams of users. And this is a different concept coming in. We'll go into that in a minute. But essentially, a team dictates what domains, who is part of a team, and what domains you have access to, essentially. This allows for two people to be on two different audit teams, auditing investment funds or auditing healthcare claims, one on physical therapy, one on normal medical claims or equipment-based claims or something like that. So this is how the system allows for that. Quick overview of domains. You have various domains, and as part of your domain, the system allows for different configurations. That means it'll say, give me your documents. I'm going to use vision extraction and extract it. Then I will go through an enrichment phase and classification phase. Then I will go through a validation phase where a human can validate. Once they've validated, their manager can approve it and things like that. And we can then go ahead and send it, create an output, a PDF document or a JSON object, and send it to downstream systems, essentially, if need be. We also have agents. Now, an agentic behavior as a whole is you send a large amount of data, or you send your data to LLM and you provide it with a list of functions or methods it can call to help you manipulate or process the data in a certain way. So we'll get into that in a minute, and I'll go through each one of these. But you can also set up your integrations, i.e., if your organization has downstream API endpoints, that is your custom domain, your custom logic, and you want to expose that to an AI engine, you can use this application for that. We consume MCP endpoints, and we consume JSON, REST-based API endpoints, essentially. So on my sample, the first one I'm going to show you is the capability for me. It's an audit-related capability. I'm going to be jumping around a bit, sorry about that. Is to say, go ahead and extract my stocks. My client has given me a list of stocks that they own. I'm going to audit that, and I'm going to call my endpoint and my application will tell me what the value of those stocks are, essentially. So we'll go through that process. The application also includes queues, i.e. everything is message queue based. Everything can be started and stopped at any given point of time. We also have agent-based logs, i.e. what the application, what Lumio agents are doing, and we also capture all of the information that was sent back and forth between AI endpoints, and which AI endpoints and how many tokens it used up, how many thinking tokens it was, and what was the status and everything like that. So you'll see all of this in action. The first set we'll talk about is we're going to actually run this one together, is stock valuation. And the concept is very simple. You are an auditor. Your client has said at the end of the month, as of December 31st, 2025, they own 100 stocks of Microsoft, 100 of Apple, 100 of NVIDIA, and they tell you what their value is, and you as an auditor go in and check against your stock market, or you come up with your pricing for those stocks as of end of day. And this is an actual business case scenario. There are a few others, but this is the simplest way to explain what all capabilities are there in the system. By default, if I choose any other type, the system will allow you to do is specify a title, select a domain type, and specify which team it is. So a user may be part of multiple teams, and based on which team this case is allocated to, they will be only users in that team will be able to do that. So this is how you can keep distinction between who can do what on a project per se. So going into just simple stock valuation, I'm going to take a stock valuation contract, and this is a simple one with 10 or 20 stocks in it. And I'm going to say my audit date is, I'm going to pick the 15th of May. Seems like a good date. And this is AI Think, and this is demo stock valuation. And we will hit fire. If everything is going good, we'll see about that. The system should essentially create a AI call to say, hey, this is the document they've submitted. Go ahead and extract the value for me. Now, we realize, and I'm using local AI, so I have a limit of only 5 pages maximum that I can actually send across. So it actually finished it, and now it's gone to the next one. It's gone to the agentic round, and you're going to see an agentic behavior come in. At some point of time, it's going to call my API endpoint and say, give me the stock codes for that. So give it a second. We'll wait for this whole thing to go, and then I'll show you what the system did, and I'll show you what the UI is behaving. But this thing takes a few seconds plus I'm not near my computer right now, so it's taking a little bit longer.
By the way, him about a 2-minute warning.
Are you serious? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Okay, no problem. Then we'll go into just showing you what the system does. System has taken the document that was extracted and has actually extracted the contents. It is waiting for the agent to finish its processing. We'll get back to that in a minute. Oh, yeah, it is. So it did finish the agent to do the processing. And the agent basically looked at all of the data that was in the document and called our API endpoint and said, for the given date, May 15th, go ahead and give me the stock valuation. So you will see client price and client value and R value for the ticker symbols and stuff like that. There is another capability that was built into the application, and that has to do with if you have a document set, and this is coming from Medicare side of the house, would you mind stopping the recording? I'll go into that real quick then.
Yep.
Recording stopped.
Thank you. So this is a Medicare claim. There are 17 pages out here, and the system can, based on the configuration, go ahead and extract all the information, and it's doing contextual extraction. So it knows these are exercises, this is a treatment plan, the reps and set, and all that good stuff. In addition, it has information about domain fields and entities, so who the physical therapist was, who the patient is, of course, that's all redacted, who the therapist is, who the provider is, and all that stuff. And it can extract all that information for you and make it available downstream. When someone is auditing the claim, they have a specific set of questions. The system will guide them through reviewing a 1,000-page document or 10-page document really quickly. You can just click around and access it, essentially. Last few things I want to show you, because I didn't realize this was going to go there. Again, sorry,
Should I start
jumping
recording
back.
again?
Yeah, you can record again.
Okay. About one more minute.
All right, perfect. All right,
Recording in progress.
Remember the original stock code which I had sent? This was the request, the prompt, the amount of tokens that was exchanged. The prompt is actually going to come up. I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't. But the AI response, this was the AI response which populated the extraction. This is the AI thinking to say, hey, the users provided me with all of this. I need to go ahead and call get stock codes with the given audit date. Again, you have the request prompt about what had gone through. And then you have the system comes in, AI makes a call through our gateway to the MCP endpoints or API endpoints. It has received all the data, and it says, okay, great, I got all the stock code, and then it goes through and runs the mathematical computes for you, and it sends everything back to us. And that is what you were seeing out here. So this is what you saw out there. Everything is very transparent, everything from the prompts that we're going to, the AI tokens used and stuff. And I guess that's 10 minutes. I didn't realize it was only this long. Any questions or anything, everyone?
Any questions, anybody? You can make sure they're relayed. If you can't hear that, I can relay it. Did you hear it okay, him?
So you're saying the confidence level?
Yeah, there's a lot of confidence levels. How do you make sure those are grounded as opposed to the agent just fabricating a confidence level?
I'm just using what the agent has provided back as a confidence level.
Okay.
Yeah. We are not doing additional things. The system does have the capability of requesting multiple agents. So send the same information to multiple agents, come back and combine those in. I've not done that level of integrations right now, but the architecture is there for it to send to Claude and Gemini and OpenAI and come back and then consolidate that information.
Any other questions? Okay, cool.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Want your face on the internet, cover up or run out real quick. I'm going to start with a photo. Everybody say Hermes. All right, cool. Oh no, this is for this. So what we're going to do, those were very professional and very thoughtful. I think you're about to get the Billy Madison version of like AI engineering stuff. So I took that picture, going to throw it into Discord. Let me just pop my Discord up here. So I prepped the words just because for time purposes you don't want to watch me type this. So I was just like, hey, here's the location I'm at. Here's the food and drink that I had, the thing that I am doing right now, right? And this sprung from something I used to do myself. Any Anthony Bourdain fans in the house? Awesome. He would hate this, but I love him. And I was just like, he's gone. There's no more shows left. I've watched them all. And I want to hear his voice when I go somewhere, right? So what I've been doing for a few years is I started off doing these manually, just popping them into ChatGPT. I would go to a place, I'd pop this in, then I'd go off and open 4 tabs and get a bunch of meta information and be like, here's where I was, here's what happened, blah, 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 right? So I have literally years of these at this point now. So I just kicked one off though, because now I just have OpenClaw do it. So while I'm out, this is the beautiful thing. I used to let these backlog up, and Sunday I do 4 or 5 things or something like that. But now I'm there. I've just taken a photo of my food before I ate it, and I'm just like, send this off, and then I get the review of the experience while we're there. That's one thing that I've been doing. Before I show the other ones, I'm just going to kick off one, because in the interest of time, these things take a couple minutes. And so I'm just going to kick off this other one. So we've heard OpenClaw, we've heard Hermes. So up here, I've kicked this off, and this is going to go off to Hermes. And you can see it's going to run a whole bunch of skills and tool calls and all this kind of stuff. So for all of this, to prepare, I had Hermes make a little rundown of all of the things that I have that are automated. And some of these are OpenClaw, some of those are Hermes, some of them are both. One of them you saw is the no reservations, but whatever. So that's a natural language request. I put in some context. It uses web search. So I have Gemini's API set up for that. It goes and gets a bunch of meta information, populates that out, then writes a review in Markdown, commits that review to my website, and then goes out. Now, everything that you're going to see tonight, none of this runs on my machine. I have a Mac Mini at home. Thankfully, with the storms and everything, I was like, oh no, I hope the power doesn't go off. But I have a Mac Mini at home, so I have a little sandbox. I've got OpenClaw on there, Hermes on there, and then I'm playing with the new things from Codex and Claude. So this is going to go through. In a couple of moments, we're going to see this up on my website, right? Another one that I have, I'm a big music lover. I love a lot of songs. Sometimes I don't know why. And so I want like a review of it. And so I'll grab the URL from it, from like the share link on Spotify, throw it into OpenClaw, and then I have to grab the lyrics. What I found is a lot of the lyric sites are super protective about lyrics. They bot sniff, and none of their APIs will actually give you the lyrics. And I need the full set to be like, what's the purpose of the thought behind this song? So I do a little manual thing there. Copy the lyrics myself, copy the URL, paste it in, and then it generates a music review. I'll show one of those real quick. Stash is my fun little thing where you have read later lists. Everybody, I'm sure we all have a backlog of things we hope to get back to and read and blah, blah, blah. So I just have a channel in here. I just slap the URL in. It takes it, it posts it to this little API that I made. And that was how I was doing with OpenClaw. But now with Hermes, because I have really gotten into Obsidian, it just now takes it and puts it in my read later. And so in my read later, I have all the things that I'm supposed to read. And I've been able to keep up much better this way. But I read it in here, and then I just archive it. And then on every morning, and this one's actually a Claude automation, every morning it looks at my Obsidian, and it looks for anything that was archived since the last time that it was done, and then it puts that up on my website. So this is just another thing. You'll notice a trend. Everything that I do just kind of goes up on the personal site. So even this, Hermes created this for me, and it's just a URL up on my site. And then this one, you cannot play with agents and not have them make you money, right? That's what everybody wants, make me rich. So I've been playing with sports betting. And what I'm trying to do, is say if I took $500 and I put it in a high yield savings account at around 4%, could I beat that by using a martingale betting system and a bunch of agents reviewing bets across the thing? The answer is yes, right now. But we had a couple little snafus along the way trying to learn the system. But I'll share a thing that kind of shows some of the stats for that. And then the last thing I've been doing, and this is only the last 2 weeks, I do a Today I Learned. So I read a tweet or I read an article. I write my favorite parts about it down in an Obsidian file. I just do the raw data entry, a loose interpretation of the Carpathes syndrome system. So I just write raw notes. In the morning, Hermes takes all that, compiles it into a summary that's nice. And then we have a script that then takes a DesignMD file and outputs a different design every day for one of those things. So I'm playing and learning with DesignMDs, playing with what I'm learning, all this kind of stuff. So that's most of my tasks. Real quick, because I know everyone was going to be curious, can LLMs or harnesses, whatever you want to say, pick sports bets? Kind of. Rhythm is not an AI, essentially it's a model, but it's a Bayesian model, and they throw some AI on top of it. It's 50 and 25 since I started this. The rest are them taking from those picks and seeing if they can pick the winner. And they get to pick or they get to pass. And so you can see their records. Do not ever use Perplexity to try and pick a sports bet for you. All right, so that's all the stuff. But let me go back and see if we can see the things that happened since we were gone. So here, if we refresh, we should have all of you wonderful folks. That's cool. Right here, and we're AI Tinkerers at Vaco. And then you can see the general vibe of what happened here. Oh yeah, so this goes to a ChatGPT. It grabs the thing, grabs a bunch of the metadata information, because this is now mapped, it's on my site, but then it does a prompt that I have saved that you write in the style of Anthony Bourdain and give me a review of what I did, make up anything that you can about the place, blah, blah, blah. So I put in that I had Papa John's and Oktoberfest and all this kind of good stuff. And so that was kind of like the run for the thing. Now, these ones they're public, but I haven't linked them up yet. But the betting daily log, this would be for the 20th because today's is giving the review of what happened yesterday. And so yesterday, you can see there were 4 picks. Each one got to choose, they rate them, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. The day went 2 and 2 on the things. But then you get to see where each one picked and what their results were. What I have found is they're horrible at picking. They're great at categorizing. And so I use Hermes and we do data analysis on these. So I found one little pattern. Let me scroll back up. If you go through here, you see the ones that are tier 2 and tier 3. Yesterday's was a bad example, but this tier 2, tier 3, when we first started this, they went 9-0 on if it was just tier 2 and tier 3, they won every single time until the 11th time or something like that. And when you're doing a martingale system, which is a double your bet every time until you lose, 9-0 is great. That's a wonderful thing. So that wraps up, I think, everything I wanted to show. I could show real quick. How much time do I have?
A minute or so.
Okay, cool. So the yesterday I learned, have anyone heard of a DesignMD file? Real popular thing is do this in the style of all these things. So I go take them from Get DesignMD. This one was Clay, I think. So this is Clay's DesignMD, and it's a bunch of stuff that I learned from a tweet, basically about Claude skills. And then, so this was that one. Oh, there's my time. But yeah, so I just go through here, do all this stuff, music reviews, all the kind of things. You just, whatever you're into, you can just make a bot do the work for you. That's essentially the thing.
I bet that model is able to get the non-linguistic?
No. So right now, all it does is it takes everything from that Spotify API gives it. So it's all just conjecture. And the reason that became a problem and why I ran into the lyrics thing is there was a song that was really cool, and it was about angst of growing up and your friends becoming parents and not getting to hang out and all this stuff. And the review was nothing about it at all. And it was oh, this has melodic tones. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? I was like, this one hit my soul. I was like, let's talk about this. That's when I learned I had to get lyrics in there because it just makes it up on what it thinks the genre and stuff is. And
Agents headless.
Ooh. Right now, I don't have any browser use agents in play.
So you should grab the website name, and it'll go through and screenshot.
Yeah, I could just go to Genius and have it just grab the thing. They could even just run a script and grab the whole guts of the main or something like that.
Yeah, but like integrating the Claude MCP with the cowork scheduling is how you can get around all the browser stuff without going
Love
too
it.
crazy.
Thank you for that. That's a great idea. I want to definitely do that. Awesome.
And so for the second time tonight, you'll see a big fan of Obsidian. And so one thing I do is I keep my reading lists in Obsidian. And right now, we have attention is all you need. But let's kill it. Delete file. Delete. Okay, I don't have that file anymore. And I think I have to reload that. All right. Meet my Pi agent. So while everyone's playing with OpenClaw and stuff, I do the foolish thing of building my own agent harness on top of Pi.dev. It's really nice. It is close to the modularity that I was talking about. And so what I might do is paste this right here. My agent, instead of living inside of a terminal, right now lives inside of Obsidian. And it's nice because it's right next to the things I'm working with. So I'm going to say, I really thought this was probably an important article and maybe it'll change the world even. Can you stick this into my reading list? And then once you're finished, open it up in Obsidian. Now I'm kind of giving it hints there. Please open it up in Obsidian. I'm going to try to make it where the skills are written such that it knows its own context a little bit better than that. But let's see how it does. It has access to the internet. So the capabilities I've stuck into this thing is it has access to the internet. It has access to skills, obviously. It's still making a lot of silly mistakes. So I think I'll need to debug it. Of course, debugging today is like asking, why did you do that? Change your skill. All right, we're writing something. All right, so here's what it gets.
Reading note added and opened.
Okay, and did you hear that? That's a little hint. On Macintosh, it has the say command on the terminal. So if you look away from the screen, just say on the agents.md, like when you're finished, say what you did, and it'll bring you back to it. You can quit checking Twitter. So it knows the way I like these things written. It knows that I've got tags and stuff associated with it. I can use Obsidian bases, which are like databases, to view these things any way I want to later. I think I'm going to make a to-do list to start actually making progress instead of a mausoleum of all the stuff that I said I wanted to read. Yeah, but it's really cool. And it lives inside of Obsidian. But that's not all. If you use the Open Agent Protocol, you can actually have your agent live anywhere on the internet. If you see like this chat with your agent, just click on that and poof, there your agent is too. So not only can I just pick my agent, I can go ahead and continue the conversation I was having inside of a different context. Ooh, now there's something, this might be a bug. There is one scene that is effectively missed here that's super important. Whenever you wake up your agent in a new context, it can be provided skills. So Wikipedia, I know, I'm done. Wikipedia has its own skills through the Open Agent Protocol that it can push over into my agent so that my agent is just imbued with this new set of superpowers. I know Kung Fu. So you can read those skills and review it, and if you like it, you approve it, and now you can do all these other cool things. I can continue the conversation I was having in a different context with different skills and say, can you find me any Wikipedia articles that are relevant to this? I'm using a pronoun with an antecedent. So it's cool that you can take conversations with you. And part of the skills that it should have, and I didn't see the skills be injected, so this could be my bug. Yeah, exploring web search options, that probably means that it's not going to do the next cool thing. Let's see right now. See if you can open the transformer page in Wikipedia. Trying to give it a context clue, but since I didn't see those skills loaded, it's probably just going to do something else. Yeah, okay. It should open the skills in that little frame to the left. Now, I did lie. There's no such thing as Open Agent Protocol, but there really needs to be. I want the ability to take the agent, put it on my phone, and my garbage disposal died today. I want to be able to walk into Home Depot and it'd be like, oh, here's some new skills. Would you like to know how to navigate the store and what the inventory is? And yes. And then I want to get in an airplane and I want it to say, okay, you can look through the movies on the television, or how about these 5 movies you'll probably like because I'm your assistant, but I also have the skills of an airplane. Or I want to go home and see what's in the fridge. I need to cook something. List. All right, can you order the stuff that I'm missing? Sure. I want that. So anyways, that's unharnessing the agent. That's the big thing I'm trying to sell right now. I don't know why I'm not going to make any money from it, but it's in it. It's a cool idea. There it is, and that's it. Any questions? So you can do this with any agent. I chose py.dev because it's just really modular, pluggable, and I wanted to learn all the pieces. But put any agent into RPC mode, and that gives you the ability to standard in JSON and standard out its updates as it's changing, as it's thinking, start thinking, thoughts, end thinking, start tool. You've got all of those updates. And so all I did is created a client for that stream in an iframe. And Obsidian hosts an iframe. Your browser hosts an iframe. The way I cheated and made this open agent protocol is I've got a Chrome plugin, so I cheated that way. I'm not really in partnerships with Wikipedia, unfortunately. And then you could do something similar for your phone. Security is an issue. In an iframe, you're okay, but if you're using your agent on third-party apps on your computer, they could still sniff stuff. So everyone's got to figure out all things. Security is an issue with skills that you just inject into something. So also, I at least wanted to make it reviewable, but it's going to happen. In 5 years, we're going to be walking around with a thing in our ear talking to our assistant, our personal assistant every day. So, anyone else? I hope they're the really thick ones like Zuckerberg wears all the time. Right? This is a good question, maybe for the audience as well, because I'm curious how things are moving, skills versus MCP. For me, I bought almost whole hog the py.dev notion that skills is the way to go, because it's very legible. Here's the context you're in, and then here's the instructions. You can zoom down into those instructions. You get the ability to have scripts where you can call whatever you want to, which would work like MCP. And it's, what's the name for this? Gradual display, that's not it. Progressive disclosure, I've got a block on that one. Progressive disclosure, thank you. See? But MCP all has some nice things that are not automatic with skills. Like when everything is just a CLI, a bash command, then auth is not have as clean of a story. But I'd be interested in brainstorming about that. Maybe the two should have a baby, I think.
Yeah, and it's like the plugins too. You probably, with some of this stuff, like Wikipedia probably has an MCP. And so if that agent's running elsewhere, right? It's not on machine.
No, it's running actually on my machine in the
Okay.
background.
So then you're talking to it in the iframe or whatever third party. It would probably be, at worst, what's being sniffed is your communication to your agent itself, right? Because that's just the front layer.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting more security out of that way, and then you just use the skills to define how. I mean, like the tools are pretty much broadcasted back to your agent that the MCP connection provides.
Mm-hmm.
So your skills are saying, hey, when I'm at Home Depot, use the Home Depot MCP connection. Or when I'm browsing Wikipedia, use my MCP connection, and then you've already had you've developed all the way those pieces are working from the MCP server. So then there's not like, you're probably getting some ambiguity, or maybe each time is maybe a little bit different, right? Because the skills are like a guideline, right? Because it doesn't always have to follow.
AI agents always don't have to follow. That's
Like
part of the problem.
Yeah, so
but
it takes away kind of the AI, like the model's ability to say, I'm going to actually do it this way this time. Like you said, it opened up a new tab. Whereas if in the MCP server, you can be programming that exactly how you need it to behave. And then the skills are mostly just taking some of the decision-making of calling upon those tools instead of allowing the AI the full lift of, okay, he's asking to do this thing, I'm going to decide how to do it. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of handing it off and offloading some of the decision-making.
It's a little bit more exact. It's well defined.
But
It's
what
like,
you're
this
not
is a
gonna
call.
get is that automatic, like if you walk into Walmart and you don't have that set up MCP connection yet, and you've done like your, I don't know, at least now.
Let's chat about it. I'm curious.
Yeah, part of what I liked about using skills instead of MCPs is actually that a lot of times with the MCP, whatever it is that you've gone and called out, like you're going to get like a huge payload back. I've started to do a lot of the pattern of my skill will go to use a CLI that hits the API for the thing, pulls back whatever files there are, and who cares if it's,
Yeah.
and then use Python or other tools to programmatically deal with whatever information is contained inside of that. And so I found that pattern keeps the context window smaller because it's dealing with tools dealing with the thing instead of actually trying to go read in the whole context all at once. But then the other nice thing there is like there are a lot more APIs and MCPs out there. So you have to write a little CLI to go.
Just build your own.
Yeah.
Build your own MCP, and then, like what you said, trim it down at the MCP level so that what it gets back is already slimmed out to what you need.
Yeah, accomplishing the same thing, same pattern, just different.
It's all, there's a lot of overlap on what can do what, and then it's the whole game of what's the most efficient way of getting from point A to point B.
That's been what I've been trying to figure out is, I feel like a lot of these things, and I'm brand new into this, I didn't code until, I still don't code, but until like last November, and I'm just trying to like in my head figure out like the difference between MCP and accessing an API instead, and anyway, how would you explain that to a newbie?
It seems like the MCP is the design for giving a toolkit to the AI, and so when you have that connection, your MCP server is, let's say, so I've done an MCP server for the Microsoft stack, and each one of those pieces you might want to split up to different app registrations, and those app registrations are going to have different functionality. One's going to have send mail, one's going to have I need to read SharePoint, another one's going to have I need to read OneNote. All of those with the Graph API all behave differently. So you have to design the MCP server to get around these things like, oh, if someone's sharing me a OneNote, but it's something they own, it's not going to be the same route that my AI might try and go to right away. Your AI might try and access it from OneDrive. It needs the user, the UPN to get into that piece. And so the MCP is like, you understand that when you're making those calls, you want a lot of the heavy lifting and like scripting and API calls and all that kind of stuff bundled into different tools, and then when you have those available, like you can define which ones to use when with the skills to make that more efficient. So generally you don't want to, it also solves a lot of security issues, because if your MCP server is going to be holding those keys that your AI model is otherwise going to need to make those direct API calls, right? You don't want to have a .env file in your root directory that your Claude is going to look at and go, okay, cool, he's asking to do this, I can use this MCP server, but I have all the credentials here, I'm going to make this API call myself. That's going to go to Claude. It's going to gobble that up, it's going to read it, plain text, and
it's kind of like padding around API usage?
What's that?
It's like extra padding around API usage?
It's making the API call. So you're connecting to an MCP server, and that MCP server is getting your call from your AI going, oh, this guy wants to send an email. He sent me the stuff to send, I'm going to just pass it off. And I have those credentials stored, and you've done like just your OAuth kind of token or like a bearer token or whatever to the MCP. And the MCP server, it can run like your API. If you've ever hosted an API that's talking to SQL, you have secure environment variables that have the keys into those things that nothing else can see.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess like when MCPs came out initially, like I was super excited about it because those to like skills, we have to write it all out, but I think that sort of like discoverability is like the big source of limitations. So one of the big limitations information interaction with the external system is basically limited. So that's like super limiting, and it's also like a super system at, and like how can you guarantee that like the system can like authenticate like depending on. So I feel like MCPs just don't incorporate like the file system, the ability to run code, and so while I think it's really cool for like discoverability, I think it's like a bit of an analog for maybe like websites. I feel like skills is a bit more like that analog is more like kind of edge computing, and it's a bit more just like you can do more things with it. And like I think although there's still a ton of cool things with MCPs, like the auto discovering of capabilities is really, it's still amazing, but you could probably get an Explorer agent to like discover what's going on, read documentation, and write its own skills, and maybe eventually that will supersede the benefits of the auto discoverability of MCPs. But it's just my sense that like we weren't ever able to like productionize anything with MCPs. So
I wonder if I can take a stab at it just as just another vantage point and stated as, is this right? I'm more familiar with skills than I am with like MCPs, but I am very familiar with how the model is actually interfacing with this and like what the agent is doing before there was a notion of skills or MCPs or anything. In the beginning, there was just the model, and you put an input document in and the completion would come out. So we wrapped a loop around that, and then you have basically the back and forth between, initially it's just the user and the model, use the model, you have a conversation, and we put an inner loop in there and introduced the notion of tools. Now, MCP was cool because it took the idea of tools, and as far as the model knows, it's still just tools. The actual model doesn't see anything, but you can call this with whatever. Here's the arguments, and here's the description of that. But MCP formalized a lot of the stuff that is challenging, like the auth and stuff like that. And this is parts that I'm not super familiar with yet. I just know this is gotchas, and I need to be more familiar with it. Skills are an interesting distinction from MCPs. I think it was like an answer to some of the problems that were perceived in MCPs. Whereas like with MCPs, I think they just dump all of their descriptions and the parameters and stuff into the context, and they were blamed for taking up a lot of context. Is that true-ish?
yes.
Yeah. Whereas skills, the idea is, okay, let's do this progressive disclosure, and all the model sees when you load up 20 skills is it sees that little metadata at the top of each skill. And that's not so bad. At some point, that becomes confusing too. But it gives the model just enough notion that it can say, okay, I'm doing this type of task. It's time for me to look in there and just check it out. And then what it does is it reads the whole file, which is going to be that long. And then that file has access to a references directory underneath it if it wants to, or you can put other files like, here's how to live life. Okay, you're going to have a baby. And so you go to the baby reference and check that out, and you can keep going down as far as you want. And there's also a scripts directory where if you need something programmatic, something where it's not, something where you want to make sure it does exactly the thing you want it to do, then in the documentation in the text, you say, here's the scripts that you can use, and here's the file where the script is, and you can just run it. Here's the arguments. And so in that respect, it's introducing tools, but it's requiring the agent to use bash to run the tools. But I think you could still also do it by just injecting tools into it. I think the two should honestly have a baby, and so that you could do something and not have to worry about the auth, but it also be a little bit cleaner implementation. But everyone's still figuring this out together.